Hello, everyone. Jeff Woods here. Welcome to the August One Thing monthly webinar. Each month, we sit down with somebody who is usually a best-selling author to talk about the principles of the one thing. And interacting with those of you in our community, there has been this common question of, okay, I want to start living the one thing. Or I'll ask it in the form of a question. How many of you have decided that, you know what, at some point in my life, I decided I wanted to start living the one thing? If so, put me in the questions box. Okay, all of you. Now, how many of you, when you started to live the one thing, figured out that while it's the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results, it's not the surprisingly easy truth behind extraordinary results? If so, put me with an exclamation point behind it in the questions box. Yeah. What do you think is the one thing that's missing that stops you from living the one thing at a higher level? How would you answer that? Pam Jones nailed it. Accountability. It's accountability. And it's why the topic of this webinar today is why getting a coach changes everything. There has been this constant conversation in our Living Your One Thing community about how do I have more accountability and what are the various levels of that. And at the highest level, when it comes to getting a coach, how do I know what the right fit is? So today, our webinar is 100% in service of that. The beautiful woman that you see on the screen is Charlotte Savoy. She, for the last 20 plus years, has built several big businesses. She owns multiple businesses today, and her one thing is being a coach. And she's my coach, actually. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic for us to get to have a conversation about what this looks like. And this is going to be very interactive. So please, if you have questions, submit them in the questions box. I've got Kaylin over here. She's going to be flagging them and shooting them on over to us. And it's going to be a fun conversation. So Charlotte, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. So I talked a little bit about your background. What does it mean to be a coach? What does it mean to get coaching?
What does it mean to be a coach and to give coaching? I guess, or to have coaching is two different things. I think, at least for me, becoming a coach was a natural progression in starting businesses and growing as a leader. In all of the things that I've done for the last 20 years, I've had coaches. Sometimes I've had mentors, sometimes I've had consultants, sometimes I've had coaches. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I hired a really great business coach and had that coach for about 5 years. And now today, that's the reason that I'm in coaching. Is what I realized is that the evolution of my leadership and my development was to pour into other businesses and other owners and provide that level of support that I was getting from my coach.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, you mentioned you've had coach, mentors, consultants. How would you describe the difference between those three?
So I think, well, number one, a coach is somebody who stands with you on the front lines of your business and takes a stand for you and your success even when you won't. Um, it's somebody who holds you accountable to the goals that you set for yourself. And I think it's somebody who helps you see a perspective in your business and in your life that generally you couldn't possibly see because you're the one in the weeds doing the work. And so I think it's somebody who helps you understand that a crisis isn't a crisis until it really is a crisis. It's focusing on planning and not problems. It's shining a light on blind spots that maybe you don't want to see or that you can't see. And I think it's really it's a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
I think with a mentor, mentorship in my experience is usually somebody that I have sought out or I've seen people seek out for a relationship that's less structured. It's not really focused on improving results or performance. It's kind of like somebody to bounce ideas off of. It usually doesn't have a mentor relationship doesn't usually have an accountability piece. And generally, a mentor is not somebody that you pay. A coach is a paid relationship. It's somebody who you will show up for differently when you are paying for that relationship than a mentor that's just kind of there to, that you don't really have to listen to if you don't want to, and you can if you want to. Um, so I think that's kind of a difference. And then a consultant, in my mind, a consultant is somebody who's an expert in a specific type of business, and they're there to provide you with a solution, and they kind of own that solution. Whereas in coaching, we're working together to dig through the weeds and get to the root of the problems. And then you will self-discover that a little bit more than the consultant who says, okay, well, here's your problem and here's your answer. As a coach, it's my job to help you figure out what the real root of the challenge is, and then build a strategic plan around that to get ourselves out of it.
That's great.
Help?
When you reflect back on your journey, how did you know that it was time for you to bring a coach into your world?
For me, I would say that's probably, I would ask the same question of you, Jeff, like when you knew. I would say for me, it's anytime I've hit a ceiling of achievement. So when I hit the same results and I'm not seeing a change in if it's a sales business, if my sales are the same year after year, or my vacation schedule is the same year after year, or my date nights are the same. Like if I'm not evolving and changing, there's usually a missing relationship for me, and that's usually a coach. What do you think?
Yeah. I remember it was pretty clear. It was about a year to a year and a half into starting this business when Jay looked at me and said, at some point, you're going to want to consider having a coach. And I looked at him, I said, but you're my one thing, Jay. Why not you? And he said, no, I'm your partner. And there's a difference between me holding a 411 with you on a weekly basis and giving you perspective and mentoring and guiding you versus somebody that you're going to pay whose job is to show up as an executive in your business to challenge your thinking, to challenge the vision you're casting, to ensuring that you have the right talent in place, who's fighting for you to stretch beyond what you think is possible. And he says, I can play that role, but it's not my one thing to play that role. That's what a coach is for.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's also, the relationship is different between somebody who you actually work with. So Jay is your partner and your mentor, and yet he is his, in any relationship like that, you're not always going to have neutrality in the, is that a word or did I make that up?
Yes.
I think that sounds like
we
a
just
good
made
word.
it up. If so,
We just made it up. I think it sounds like a good word. I think the neutrality is not there, where his ability to be entirely unbiased and neutral couldn't possibly exist all the time because he's tied to the outcome. For me, as your coach, I'm tied to the relationship, I'm tied to the partnership, I'm tied to your success, but I don't have, I have a different, my interest is in seeing you get what you're after and achieving the goals that you've set. It's a different type of relationship and conversation, I think.
yeah. So from a high level, what I'm hearing is if you're the type of person that is looking to achieve big things and you see that you're hitting a ceiling of achievement, you're missing a person. And I've heard Gary say this, you're in the form of leverage, like somebody you need to hire, or you might be missing a coach who's going to hold you accountable to stretching you and helping you achieve more than you thought possible.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that I've heard regularly from people is, well, I don't know if coaching would work for me because I'm already pretty accountable, or I don't think I need accountability. I think depending on your behavior profile and how you operate, the type of coaching that you're going to need is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to have a different need. So like for me, I'm a driver. I'm hard driving. I move very fast. And I get sometimes I'll have a tendency to like roll over people around me because I'm on a mission to accomplish something. And for me, the coach is the relationship where I can say like, okay, listen, here are the things we're working on. And my coach may slow me down and say, okay, wait a second, like, let's make sure the strategy of what you're doing is in alignment with your vision and with the people around you. Like, how are they going to win in what you're doing? It's so for somebody who's a driver, it's making sure that they accomplish the vision, but they do it with their people and through their people and not in lieu of their people. For people that are like super outgoing and really focused on the relationships and that kind of thing, sometimes coaching where it's going to be a benefit is bringing consistency to the business, and just and having it not be floating based on what's happening that week and who they're meeting with and what they're doing, but it's bringing some consistent conversation. And then you've got other people who are more strategic thinkers, and they're really into their spreadsheets and like that kind of thing. And a coach can help you execute through people that way, where it might not be something you're naturally wired to do, but by asking the right questions, we can bring you out of that and help you execute through the people. And then, you know, a lot of people just need somebody so they're not doing it alone. Maybe they need help taking risks. Maybe they need help not being so conservative. Conservative is good until it's not. Sometimes you have to drive a little bit harder, and having that relationship will help you kind of push through those barriers that you might be having.
Well, what you're saying something that I've heard Abe Shreve say. So, who, for people who don't know, Abe is my equivalent on the coaching company side. So our company is around creating content and training around the one thing. And ultimately we knew we had a need for a coaching company. And Gary said early on, that's not your one thing. That's somebody else. It's very specific. So that's Abe. He started the company of Maps Business Coaching, which Charlotte is building her company inside of. And I remember Abe just saying, if you're on the front line of your business by yourself, you're making it harder than it needs to be. And I think all of us can resonate with the time when we were really struggling with something and we were doing it alone and we're guessing, and we just wished that we had that person who could bring a fresh perspective or who could challenge us differently. And I think that's what this looks like. When's a time in your life, Charlotte, when you were doing something alone, it was harder than it needed to be, and then you had that person come in as a partner to help you?
I think, you know, naturally, because I'm a driver and I'm a doer and I'm a move fast kind of person, I'm actually naturally wired to do that all the time. So for
Hmm.
me, I've put measures in place where I have coaches all around me. Abe is actually my coach, and I have a fitness coach and a nutrition coach and which I just hired. I mean, you know, like, because I've recognized it's an area of weakness where I've been doing all of these things, and being really creative around, okay, well, maybe we'll try this diet this week, or maybe we'll only eat this, or let's go do. And what I realized is despite the fact that I am a really accountable person who is driven to find success, I actually perform better with a coach. So I just literally just hired a nutrition coach and a fitness coach this week.
Hmm.
I think everybody is naturally wired to be entrepreneurial and not necessarily to go and seek out the models and the systems. And I think that's, truthfully, for me, that's what my coach has done, and that's what I hope I do for the clients of our company, is getting you sometimes to slow down and say, wait, what you just said, let's dig deeper. It's hearing the things that you're not saying because you're moving so fast to build it, and digging through and uncovering some of that so that we can build it with a stronger base and build it
Yeah.
faster.
So let's talk about accountability a little more, because the topic of this was why getting a coach changes everything, and that foundation is that accountability relationship. What, how do you define accountability, and what does that look like in this type of a partnership?
So I think there's two different types of specific accountability, right? There's inspirational accountability, and then there's punitive accountability. Most people are geared to move towards pleasure or pain. A lot of people move, away from pain more than they move towards pleasure. Um, so I think the honest answer to that question is it actually depends on you. What works, what Abe does in my coaching relationship with him works for me, But if I tried the same thing with you, it wouldn't necessarily work with you. Some coaches create like a level 10 discomfort, and it completely creates fatigue. Um, sometimes, sometimes it's me being disappointed, and sometimes it's me being more intense. And I think the reality is that in what we're doing, when we're matching people with coaches, we're doing a lot of question asking, and we're working together to figure out what does accountability need to be for you. So I would ask the question of you, in our relationship, what does accountability look like for you? Is it the same every week, or is it different?
Are you actually asking?
Yes, I'm literally asking.
Oh, good. Yeah. Accountability means, for me, when we're really narrowing our focus to the things that matter most and being unwavering with it, that that goal is the goal. And like, one of the first things I said to you is, I can outcoach a lot of people. Don't let me outcoach you.
Yeah.
And I will talk myself out of every single situation, and you can't buy into my BS. So accountability to me looks like somebody who's going to be really clear on what we're marching toward together. And when I'm telling a story, they're not buying it.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. That was like literally one of the best things you ever said to me, because I thought, wow, this is a guy who like really knows himself, and you allow me to stop you dead in your tracks. And by the way, every week is not like that. There are some weeks that are a little bit uncomfortable. Um, and not every week is like that. And when it gets, you've given me permission to go there, and when it goes there, it is truly coming from a place of, I care about you and your business and your goals and what we're building and what we're creating and the opportunities that we're creating for other people. That matters to me. And it matters to me enough to not let you feed yourself and then me a bunch of BS. That it, that's what standing on the front lines is, to say, wait, go back. Like, are
Mm-hmm.
you sure? It's really digging into that. And accountability, sometimes that's all it is just digging in harder and harder and harder. It's not punishment per se. Now, listen, we've got everybody needs something different. I've had people have to write checks and mail them to me. And if they didn't do their homework for the week because they hadn't done it 3 times, they had to send it in to the politician they didn't like. I've seen all different kinds of things, but it's something that we create together. It's not a one size fits all kind of
Yeah.
deal.
So from a high level, I'm hearing it's holding yourself able to do what you're going to do. And what that looks like is really unique to you. I guess,
Mhm.
what can somebody, if they don't have the self-awareness of what it looks like for them, what are some questions they can ask themselves so they might be able to understand, what does accountability look like for me?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say, um, when in your life have you tried something and been successful? And what were the pieces inside of that? If you had to pick it apart and figure out, okay, I had a goal of this and I hit it, what are the things that I did consistently or that kept me on track, versus um, where did I set a goal and I didn't hit it, and what got in the way of me hitting it? And we would probably start there and say, okay, so you had a goal of losing 20 pounds and you did it. How did you do it? What specifically? And we dig. Oh, okay, so you set an alarm clock every morning and you did this and you did this. So accountability for you looks like structure and consistent follow up or consistent feedback, or I think you just have to dig into it that way. But that's the question I would probably ask, is when did I win and how did I win? And when did I lose and what got in the way of me winning?
That's good. If somebody's looking up and they're going, all right, I'm at a ceiling of achievement. I understand this idea. I'm doing it by myself. And if I had somebody who was a partner in this, who was actually holding me to greatness when I'm fighting for limitations, things might be easier or unnecessary. How does somebody figure out if a coach is the right coach for them?
Um, I think it depends. I mean, in our organization at Mass Business Coaching and my coaching company, there's a really in-depth process to get to know the person and their business. And ideally, we would match you with the right coach. If you currently have a coach and you're not sure if that coach is the right coach for you, um, what I would say is that it is, and keep me honest on this because I'm your coach and this is my goal. And I hope that this is, I hope and believe this is what our relationship is like. But I would say that it's, if you don't truly believe that that person is a partner in your business and they care and understand about the needs of your business, your big why, how it affects your family, what's at stake, what it means to win. If that person doesn't feel like a true partner to you, that's probably not the right coach for you.
Yeah, that's good. And I also remember when we were right before our first call, you asked a question of what are the top three things that we would absolutely have to focus on
Yeah.
and succeed in for this to be a win for you.
Yeah.
And I remember taking the time because I've got to imagine from your standpoint, you can look at that and ask the honest question, can I be a partner in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I think one of the cool things, so I've had, like I said, lots of different coaches, lots of different mentors, things like that. In some of the coaching relationships that I've had, I signed up, I hired a coach, I signed a 1-year contract, I had the same coach. And if that coach wasn't the right fit for me, I was kind of stuck. I think what's really cool and different about what we're building is the reason I asked you those questions was because I really deeply want to know how do we know when we're winning? Because all of our goals need to be specific and measurable. And B, am I the right person for that? And if I'm not, guess what? I'm going to tell you I'm not the right coach for you, and I'm going to introduce you to the person who is. I think um, a great coach is literally sometimes going to tell you when it's time to transition because you've got a different need than is maybe their strength or their skill set. And, I'm really lucky that Abe and I coached together for 5 years. And that's I think unheard of. Most of the coaching relationships that I see are 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, a couple of years, but like they don't last forever because it's not unreasonable to want a different perspective, to have a
Hmm.
different need. You might have financial stuff you need to start working on, and maybe I'm not the best person for that because my strength is accountability, not financials. And so we might say, hey, listen, we're moving into this thing, and I actually have somebody that I'd like you to have a call with because I think they'd be a really good. That's a good coaching relationship when maybe you don't even have to ask for it, but they say, how about a different perspective?
Yeah, and I think this is refreshing because even to hear that when you look at the track record to say that it was the relationship with that client was 3 months, 6 months, a year, a few years, but for you and Abe to be going 5 years is rare. I think from a
It's
client
beyond
perspective,
rare. Yeah, it's
yeah,
unheard of. And guess what? We're in partnership now. That's why I'm building a coaching company inside of what he and Gary are building. Because we developed that relationship. It's that rare and that unheard of. It's not unheard of to work with a coach for 6 months. I have one coaching client who every 120 days switches coaches, and I think it's brilliant because they're very clear on what the goal is. We work only on that, and then we switch and we get a different perspective. And sometimes those goals change because of the perspective that they're getting. I think it's brilliant.
okay. So what does it look like if somebody's listening and they're going, okay, I can imagine getting in a relationship with a coach, but you develop a relationship that you might feel bad to say, I want a new perspective. How does
Yeah.
somebody begin to have that conversation in a way that doesn't feel as awkward?
Well, if they're currently coaching with somebody that is not part of what we're doing at the One Thing in Mass Business Coaching, I think um, I probably would just look at it from a perspective of, yes, it's an uncomfortable conversation. Yes, it's hard to hurt somebody's feelings. It's harder to continue to spend money and time invested in a relationship that's not producing the results, because in the end, your family is the one paying the price for that. And that's not okay. Because if you're not achieving your goals and you're not hitting your numbers and you're not hitting all the things that you're after, your livelihood is at risk and you matter more than hurting somebody's feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like It's that important. It's just that important.
And it's interesting. It's almost like that pain and discomfort in the moment is so real and so present, and the pain or discomfort of not growing your business the way that you wanted to, or not investing as much time with your family the way that you wanted to, that pain is too far away in the future to actually realize it and be able to compare it.
Yeah. And I would say this, if you're not sure, uh, reach out to us. I mean, the thing is this, listen, nobody here is here to sell coaching. This isn't a pair of pants or a pair of shoes or something you can buy, right? Like
How does
we
it
are
fit?
right. Coaching is not a one size fits all solution. So if you have a coach and you're not sure if it's the right coach, um, reach out to us. We'll do an assessment. We'll do a deep dive into your business and what you're doing and how you're growing and how your numbers are changing, and give you an honest assessment of, like, and then maybe coach you through, well, here's how you could have the conversation. Here's how you could have the dialogue. Or, what if you went back to your coach and said, hey, listen, I really want you to do this. I'd love it if you would hold me accountable in this way, or if our calls would look like this, and give them a shot to make it work. And if they don't, then come back and see us. Um, but it's too important. It's just too important. Everything in your future hinges on you honoring the commitments that you make to yourself every week. And if that coach isn't helping hold you accountable to that, you lose.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not
Well, and if people are interested, you go to the onething.com/training. That's with the number one in the URL. You'll see information on coaching there, and you can have a call with one of the coaches. But I
yeah.
think there's something that's really interesting that you're saying in that, and it's kind of setting the expectations up front. I mean, you told me early on, hey, just a heads up. At some point, if I feel like I'm no longer the best coach for you, I'm going to tell you that, and we'll offer other suggestions. And I think one of the interesting things is, if somebody's getting into this type of a relationship, to ask the question, hey, if we fast forward and I feel like it's not working, how would you like me to bring that up with you? And let them tell you how you can tell them that it's
Yeah.
not working.
It's just an expectations conversation, right? It could be, they could say, hey, listen, that's cool, just email me. They could say, let's have a conversation about it. They could say, call so and so. I mean, it's just an expectations dialogue. And the right coach is always going to be checking in with you. Are we covering the right thing? That's one of the things that Abe does with me regularly. Um, are we covering the right thing? Did we talk about the right thing? Um,
Well,
so
you're talking about, you're doing something interesting here, because I think this is a really important topic to cover, which is, I know when I got into my first coaching relationship, I had this expectation from where I don't know, but that I would show up to the conversation and that my coach would ask these questions, that the heavens would open up from above me and light would shine down on me, and I would have this unprecedented clarity, and every call would blow my freaking mind.
right.
And
Yeah.
there were times when I did not, because I did not drive the conversation, because I did not own the call, sometimes I didn't feel like I got the value. What
Mm.
can someone do to own the relationship and ensure that they get max value?
Wow, that's a great question. I think you're a great example of a coaching relationship that works. I mean, the key here is we're partners, which means if you have a partner in a business, you don't show up to your monthly meeting completely unprepared and you have no numbers and no data, and show up and say, like, okay, what's up? What are we doing? Like, no, we're partners. So um, that relationship should be relatively structured. There should be vital signs and scoreboards and homework that we are checking every single week. And so you, as my partner, my expectation is that you're going to, if you make a commitment that week, whether it's one commitment, two commitments, five commitments, that you're going to hit them and you're going to honor them. And when you show up for the call, I'm going to show up and keep it structured and say, okay, great, let's start with your homework. How'd you do on this? How'd you do on this? Tell me about this. What did you learn? And we talk through that, and then looking through those vital signs every single time. And if you, as my partner, don't have I was just going to say P&L, and I'm sure that's a terrifying word to a lot of people on the call. We build P&Ls together. That there are a lot of things that as coaches we have to help you build that don't just exist. But once they're built, if our second call of the month is reviewing all of your vital signs and your P&L, and you just don't do it, guess what? You're going to be really disappointed, because my ability to coach when I don't have the data that we were going to be talking about, that's going to be tough. And then what you're going to get into is you're going to get into what I personally have experienced, and I know a lot of people have, which is situational coaching, which is like, okay, what's the fire of the week? Okay, let me tell you what happened, and I need your help with this. That type of coaching is not actually necessarily effective. Is it necessary sometimes? Yes. Very serious issues will come up that get immediate attention. So-and-so quit. Okay, stop everything. Let's talk about it. But the drama of the week or the fire of the week or the crisis of the week should not actually be an indication of how your coaching call is going to go every week. It should be more structured than that. And we both should have a clear agenda ahead of time of what we're talking about. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you touched on something that I think is interesting, which was the metrics, the vital signs, the scoreboard. I'm curious, for those of you who are here live, put your answer in the questions box. For those of you that are business owners, put business owner. For those of you that are leaders inside a company, but you're not the owner, put leader. For those of you that are individual contributors, put individual contributors. If there's another term that describes you best, go ahead and use it. So I see business owner, a lot of leaders, okay, individual owner, a bit of them all. So here's what's interesting. Regardless of whether you own the business or a leader inside the business or an individual contributor inside the business, how many of you right now actually have clear metrics on what success in your role looks like? It is specific and it's measurable, and you could rattle them off to us. If so, put yes in the questions box. If not, do a question mark. This will be interesting just to see.
Yeah.
Okay, we're about 60 question marks, 40% yeses, which is better than I expected. A few years ago, I would have been one of those question marks. And I remember we were probably, right around 2 years into building this business. And I had a call with Tony DeCello, who's another one of the coaches inside our world. Guy has like 20,000 hours under his belt as a coach. And he asked me, when we were talking about certain things in the business, he said, how do you know if you're successful? And I told him, like, well, we need to be at this point by the end of this year. And he said, well, are you on track? Yes or no? And I went, I think so. And he goes, you think so? What do you mean you think so? Where exactly do you have to be today? And my answer was, and he said, can you show me your scoreboard of where you should be right now, year to date? I couldn't show it to him. And he said, we're ending the call right now. And between now and our next call, you have to get a scoreboard in place. And so I worked to get an Excel sheet, and then I shot a little video and showed my virtual assistant how on a daily basis to update it so I knew exactly where we stood. And that changed everything. To understand that by the end of this month, we have to be at 1,000, and we're currently at 937. So we have a gap of 63. What are we going to do between now and the end of this month to close that 63 gap? It was just eye-opening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then probably on the next call, I would imagine it was, okay, great. So your gap is this. What specifically are you going to do? And then you may have rattled off 20 different things. And then Tony likely, or if it was me, would have said, okay, great, let's narrow that. The last time that we had an increase of this, what were the 3 things that we did? Great. Now, what's the one thing that can get the most? It's really just chunking it down and chunking it down and chunking it down and narrowing that focus so that you can get those results that you're after. Because
that was our call yesterday.
Right. Literally. Yes.
Literally,
yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I think how many of you can identify with being in that position where you are so in the weeds and you're so busy taking action, and everything is so busy and so much is changing around you, and there's so much that needs to be done that sometimes you just feel lost. If so, put me in the questions box. My hand's up, Charlotte's hand is up.
Yeah.
In those moments, having that person that's going to ask that question and go, great, what's everything you could do? What are the things you should do? Rank them in order of priority. Great, that's number one. What can you do this week to move the ball?
Yeah.
Stop doing
And
everything else. Go do that.
yeah, and then it's even asking, so from a coach's perspective, I get it. Like you're literally in the weeds. I'm fortunate enough not to be right in those weeds. So my question around that would be, okay, great. Where can we get help? Where do we have leverage? And you're like, I don't have leverage, right? No, 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 no. Like we do. We definitely do. Like look around you. Can we find it here? Can we find it here? It's seeing a different perspective that when you're in those weeds, it's just impossible. You
Yeah.
think you have no support, no leverage, no time, no money, no, I can't do this. Like, but the perspective that a coach has is just completely different. It's way up
Yeah.
here, and we're seeing something. We're seeing roadblocks that are coming ahead of you. We're seeing landmines that you're about to run, and we're seeing where there's a clear path. Like, hey, we had a clear
Yeah.
path back this way, and if we pivot just a little bit, we can get right back there. And it's helping you sometimes, I think. Sometimes my favorite coaching calls are the ones where we find where I have to stop you and say, okay, yeah, I get it. We didn't hit our goal this week and we missed this and we missed this and we missed this. Where did we win? Because
Yeah.
I really think that the biggest challenge people who are on this webinar and driving for success and for goals and that kind of thing is we get so busy climbing the mountain that we forget to turn around and look down and say, oh my gosh, look how high on the mountain I am, because it just feels like a grind. And sometimes I think that's one of Abe's strengths, is because I'm a doer and I'm one of those people who's always focusing on like, what's next, what's next, what's next. That having somebody just say, hey, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but like you had these 9 things on your vision board for the whole year. You've already hit them and it's July. Like, that's a big deal, dude. Like, stop and let's talk about it. So, coaching isn't always necessarily accountability and how'd you do and do it harder and do it better. Sometimes it's celebrating the win, which is as important, if not more.
Yeah. Well, everything that you're saying is summarized by something I heard a mentor of mine say early on, which is it's tough to read the label when you're inside the box.
Yes. That's
And
so
we're
awesome.
all in our own box called our life,
Yes.
whether it
Hmm.
be the limit in perspective or stopping to smell the roses and celebrating the successes. It's tough to read the label when you're inside the box. What I would love to do for the people who are here live is this is for you folks. This is in service of you. You have been asking questions about this, which is why we're dedicating the one webinar we do a month to this topic. What questions do you have? You've got Charlotte here. We can answer them. And while those come in, I want to share with you. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. You should be able to see my screen. It says The One Thing. So when you go to theonething.com, that's with the number 1 in the URL, and click on the training tab, this is where everything that you need as it pertains to training around the one thing is. And you will see that we have this coaching and corporate section. So for those of you, if you are interested in exploring what this might look like, you can click on Get a One Thing Coach. Submit your interest, and one of our one thing coaches, someone like a Charlotte, will call you. It's not a sales call. They are genuinely calling to ask you questions to get a better sense of where you need help most and if it's a right fit. And for those of you, if you're going, gosh, I love this idea of becoming a coach, we're looking for coaches. You can also submit interest there as well. And for those of you, if you feel like you might not quite be ready for a coach yet, that's where we would encourage you under the foundational, or at the very top, it says The One Thing, click Learn More. You can learn more about our Living Your One Thing community. Whether you have a coach or not, being in a community of people that are practicing the principles of the one thing is immense value, because the investment in a coach is a real investment. And if your coach has to train you on the principles, you're actually not getting the full ROI versus if you knew the models, you knew the systems, and then they could coach you in your implementation of them.
Yeah.
So that's all available at theonething.com/training. All right, so let's see if what questions we have at this point. Danielle, what are your thoughts on whether the better coaches are certified or not?
Um, so certifications, that's kind of like that's such a broad term, right? Like there's all different kinds of certifications that a coach can get. And at the same time, I could pay $5,000 to go into a room and spend a half a day learning principles and materials, and doesn't actually make me a great coach. Um, that's my personal belief. I think certifications are important. I think understanding your skill and your craft and your trade and the things that you're coaching to is super important. And yet, I don't know that a whole bunch of letters behind your name actually makes you a better coach than someone who doesn't have that. And I think the right coach for you is the right coach for you, whether they have 1,000 certifications or no certifications or 10 certifications. I think it's a relationship more than it is a specific certification. Jeff, what do you think about that?
Um, I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with, I mean this with incredible empathy and respect, which is, I think going out and getting a certification is an awesome thing. And we were having a conversation with a large company recently about us bringing the models of the one thing into their organization. And we were talking about the tools like the 411. And this individual said, a fool with a tool is still a fool. So help me understand how we're going to go beyond a tool and actually draw results. So I say that again with complete respect in saying, if they have a certification, fantastic. Now let's explore how this actually looks in the relationship. How can I feel that you're going to be that partner with me on the front line of my business? Because I think we all know there are people out there who go out and just, they're lifelong learners and they will rack up degrees or rack up certifications, but they don't actually have the track record of implementing them.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
that's how I would answer that. Mike, I'm just starting with the one thing, and I'm looking forward to getting deeper into it. I feel like I have great ideas. I'm in a relationship builder culture. My vision is not awesome. I just feel like I need more structure to my days to be more organized. Can a coach help me with this to get it all together?
Yes. Yeah, that's literally that is a huge need that a lot of people have, which is just structure. There are you know, knowing the 411 and understanding the 411 and actually implementing the 411 every day is hard. It's hard. And I will tell you that I believe I am one of the most intentional people that you will ever meet. And I am highly accountable. And I hope and believe that I'm pretty coachable. And guess what? When my coach is on vacation, guess who doesn't do her 411? This girl. I know. Like I mean,
I'm the
it's like a
wrong
50
person to say that to.
I know. It's like a 50-50 shot. Like it's not unheard of that I wouldn't do it. And that's because human nature puts us in a place where when you have somebody looking at that and you actually are reporting your numbers and your 411 and those to somebody else who's going to ask you the question of did you do what you say you're going to do, you show up a little bit differently in life. So
Yeah.
yeah, like that I think is exactly what a coach is there to do, is to help you build, okay, what do my time blocks need to look like? What is the thing that I'm focusing on? Let's start with my GPS. Let's put it into my 411. And then what are the activities I'm going to do this week? And then the accountability around that. That's actually exactly what coaching is. Don't you think, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah, and Mike, I love the question, and the thing that came to my mind, which we haven't talked about yet, Charlotte, is the five models. I mean, when we
Mhm.
look at, if you're struggling getting clarity on what your one thing is, and you're struggling, you might be time blocking those priorities, but you're struggling to defend them. You're struggling to come up with ways to say no. I mean, all of the principle of the one thing is rolled up into one model called the accountability model. And that's just one of five that can be coached to. Charlotte, walk us through some of the other ones that somebody might go, oh, like that's exactly what I need help with.
Yeah, so we have the organizational model, which is our system for finding, hiring, training, leading talent, and then building the company's culture. So sometimes when you're struggling to hit your goals and you're doing, and running a million miles an hour, sometimes you're missing a who, and that who looks like digging into your org chart and figuring out where the gaps are and where the missing people are. We have a budget model, which is where we work through your budget and your numbers to focus on extreme profitability and really giving you frontline financial support, profit and loss reviews. Listen, we're not accountants. I'm not a tax advisor. And yet, sometimes when you have somebody to review those numbers and those financials with you, they can point out something that you wouldn't necessarily notice because it's just something you've done every month for 10 years. So, but having somebody dig into it and say, well, wait a second, okay, tell me about this. How long have we been doing it? What's our return on that? How many sales have we generated from that? Where did this, like just digging in and asking the questions, not in judgment, just to get the data, can change everything for you financially. So that's kind of the budget model. Then there's the accountability model. So that's all the one thing tools that we've talked about. Then you've got economic, which is business planning tools that'll create a good, strong foundation and a financial plan that can be tracked around that. And then a lead gen model. No matter what kind of business you're in, there is a lead funnel, a sales funnel. There are tools that will make sure that we're driving client acquisition at the pace and consistency that you need it. And what's cool about this is for us, we call this the wheel of focus. The coolest part to me about coaching is, you know, Jeff, you and I can be working on the organizational model, and we find a gap and we find a who that we need to get added. Okay, so we go into our budgets and we start looking at the financials. So we dig into that piece. Then we need to figure out the ways we're going to get that person hired. We get them hired. And then guess what? The wheel gets a little bit wobbly because we might, maybe that person we hired is a salesperson. So now we need to go back and look at our lead gen funnel and see what's working there. So the wheel is never really moving all the time in a round circle. It kind of tends to wobble, and we just have to get it back in balance by picking kind of one of the spokes of this model.
Like when I was thinking about as you were going through them, the majority of our time has been spent in either the lead gen model or the organizational model. We're
Mm-hmm.
hiring, we're growing, ensuring that we're hiring the right people and I'm showing up as the right leader. And then from a lead gen standpoint, what do I need to be doing to build the right type of lead gen machine so that there's constant stream of leads?
Yeah.
It's just where we've been
And
focusing.
and right on that scoreboard is the numbers, the P&L. And I always look and know, and I'm able to look at that and say, hey, by the way, if we don't do this, where do you think that's going to show up in your business? And then you have to look at it and say, oh, probably 60 or 90 days. Yeah. So what should we be doing today to prevent that from happening? Because guess what? In every business, we get busy being busy doing the busy stuff,
Hmm.
and we get to do the lead gen. Right. And then we're not busy being busy because we didn't do lead gen, and therefore our sales funnel's not full. And it's I think my job as a coach to make sure that we're watching all of those pieces to make sure that it's not wobbling so far out of balance that it's going to fall off the car.
Yep, that's right. There's a great question from Benson, which is, what do you do, Charlotte, daily to stay on the top of your game as a coach?
That is a great question. So I am a time blocking machine, and I follow a 411, and I time block growth and development, and I time block everything, and I read, I study, I listen to other coaching calls. I'm actually growing a coaching business, so I'm training coaches and developing coaches, and by doing that, it forces me to be on my game. And then for my clients, it's reviewing their scoreboards. And there are times where, I mean, Jeff, you and I have a call once a week, but is there regularly a week where we talk more than once, at least by text?
Yeah, I tend to get lonely. Or you laugh at my jokes and I need to be funny.
I do laugh at your jokes. They are sometimes funny. So it's So part of that is being on my game means I'm aware of what's happening in their business. So if you've got a big presentation, if a client that we have has a big presentation that day, I'm going to send them, I might, this is sort of embarrassing and sort of not, I might literally time block on my calendar, send so-and-so a text at 4 o'clock today, because it matters to me that they were successful in that meeting that they had. So staying on my game, I hope that answers your question, but it's
Yeah.
really just about being intentional.
Yeah, that's great. There was a great question from Valerie, which is, does your coach have to already be where you want to be in business or in life? Or is that more of a mentor?
Hmm. What's your take on that? I'm
Um,
curious.
I think if I'm asking the question, if I had somebody who truly treated me like a partner, was engaged in my business and had mastered asking great questions, if I had that person in front of me or somebody who had already achieved what I wanted to have achieved, which is the thing that actually matters more? And I remember it's what Keith Cunningham said, smart people have good answers, geniuses have great questions. And I think for me, it's more about having that. You haven't built a content business, turning a book into a online and corporate training company. You don't have that track record. Yet, I knew that I needed someone to hold my feet to the fire who wouldn't let me out coach them. And they've said, then you need Charlotte. And I'm going to tell you, I told you so.
I think that's a compliment.
Yeah. So my take, Valerie, would be no, they don't have to. And if they're not, I would stay open-minded and see how they are going to bring value.
I would agree with that completely, and I would just say that I'm literally experiencing this at our coaching company right now, where I literally have coaches in our organization that are so good that I actually think they're better than me. And they, like, I've been building companies for a long time, and I do have some pretty successful businesses going. And I think they are actually in some areas better coaches than me, because they're really good at understanding the right questions to ask, hearing what you're not saying, and understanding our models so deeply that it doesn't matter whether they've done that before. I mean, right now, the types of businesses that we're coaching, I can't even begin. I mean, there's so many different kinds of businesses, and what they're doing or what they're selling or what they're building matters less than the questions we're asking and digging into the specifics of the models and the financials and the people and the systems and the tools. All of that is what matters. And whether they've built it or not, I don't think that actually matters as much.
Yeah, well, you said something really interesting there is they're hearing what you're not saying.
Hmm.
And what makes a great business owner does not necessarily make a great coach. A great
Right.
coach is great at listening, not only at what's being said, but what has not been said, and able
Yeah.
to ask great questions to dive in and understand more. And when I think about myself, I don't have the patience for that. Me personally, I don't have the patience to listen for what's not being said all the time. And it's why I don't have a coaching roster, because I think I'm a better trainer.
Mm. That's interesting that you say that, and um, I don't know that. For me, I'm actually one of the most impatient people you will ever meet in your entire life, like super impatient. However, I care so deeply about the people who I'm either creating opportunities for or with or around or in partnership with, that it matters so much to me to slow down and listen to what they're not saying, because it
Yeah,
matters. And the best coaching relationships that I've ever had have literally just been that. They hear what I'm not saying, and they're asking the right, they're asking those good questions, and they don't need to know anything about my business if they can
yeah,
ask
that's
those.
great. Dan, I appreciate Dan's question, which he just said, just from a very basic level. What should I expect from a coach?
Mm. What should you expect from a coach? A partnership. You know, you should expect somebody who is willing to meet you on the front line of your business, somebody who's going to give you, help you gain clarity, help you build some strategic plans, help you see the things that you can or can't see or won't see. Um, who's literally just, I think it's just taking a stand for you and not allowing you to make the excuses that we all make excuses. We all don't show up sometimes in the way we're supposed to. And truly, it's a relationship and a partnership that will not allow you to do that and not allow you to trick yourself into thinking you're winning when you're not. And you might be winning in one area, but if, you know, let's say you're hitting your sales goal, but you haven't been on a date with your husband in 6 months and you haven't spent any time with your kids and you haven't had a vacation in 2 years, that's actually not winning. If that's what, I mean, if maybe it is winning if that's what you want, but if you've told me I need more time at home and I need this and I need this and I need this, like, then it matters that you're after that relationship where they're going to say, okay, great. So you did all that. That's awesome. You hit your sales goal. Good. Did you plan a date this week? Where are you going? What day and time are you going? Did you already make the reservation? Sometimes it's that. So I think it's just a partnership. What do you think?
Dan, I think to summarize, it's somebody who's going to be a partner in fighting for your possibilities when you might be fighting for limitations.
Yeah.
And he also asked a follow-up question, which is distinction between a trainer and a coach. I mean, a trainer is somebody who goes out and teaches, sorry about that, teaches the principles or facilitates a training where people self-discover and learn. Whereas a coach, somebody that you are in relationship with on a regular basis to hold you accountable to doing what you said you will do. They are not there to teach you all these new models and stuff. That can be part of the relationship, but it's about the execution. And it's just different. So folks, if how many of you, out of curiosity, came to this because a coach said you should be on this webinar? If put the number 1 in the questions box. How many of you are on this because you had some interest in coaching and wanted to learn more about it? If so, press 2. How many of you are on this just because you love the one thing and you're like, I'm just going to show up? Put 3. All right, so here's what we would, thank you. Here's what we would say. If you feel like you could benefit from having more accountability in your life, you're missing a person or a community. The question is, at what level is it right for you? The highest level of accountability is going to be to hire a coach, because that is a relationship you are making an investment in. You're paying them to show up on a regular basis to hold you accountable to your possibilities when you fight for limitations. And for some of you, if coaching is not the right time, the lead domino that you can take is to join a community that's at least living the principles. We have both of those available. So if you go to theonething.com/training, that's with the number 1 in the URL, you will see under the foundational courses, or at the very top, you can see the learn more about the community. Click that learn more button to learn about living your one thing. We do a monthly call every week where we review a 411 as a group and have accountability around it. We've got trainings and we've got a community that will support you. And if you're ready to explore coaching, click on the coaching section, fill out the information, and somebody will follow up with you within the next few days, and you can explore if it's a fit for you or not. Charlotte, considering everything we've talked about, what's the one thing you would want to leave somebody with?
Oh gosh. I think probably just, if you're curious, dig in and find out what resources are available to you. It can be scary. You know, when I hired my fitness and nutrition coach and went for the first time this week, I was literally like nervous. And it's not like I've never done it before. It's okay to be nervous, and you just have to do it. You just have to take one step forward. So get into the community, ask questions. We're not here to like pressure you into doing something you're not ready for or shouldn't be doing. But reach out and investigate, okay, well, where am I not meeting my goals? Where am I not performing to my peak potential? And just take the step and figure it out.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Our One Thing webinar for the month. We will send an email out with a replay of this. It'll also come out on the One Thing podcast. We'll send emails out about the upcoming webinars. We appreciate you making this investment of your time and learning more about this, and we appreciate you. Have a good one.